Hi there, everybody. I'm Leah.
And I'm Mike.
And we are looking at our Taiwan article for the month. It's on Changgu, which is very, very interesting. I like your whistling. You're not supposed to be whistling.
Oh my gosh, it's Changgu.
Ghost Month.
What am I doing? Do you think I'm in trouble? Should I go to a temple?
I think you should
I
right
think
now.
I probably should.
Immediately.
Yes. I like whistling, and I always have to remind myself, don't do that during Ghost Month.
I absolutely feel with you. And I also notice that for me in Taiwan, even whistling in the day feels wrong.
Really?
Sometimes. In my own house, no. But like, I caught myself whistling in an office the other day, and I was like, oh no, I shouldn't be whistling. I could make it because I was with some more traditionally thinking people.
Sure,
and I thought they might be a little bit more bothered by me doing it.
can use some of these superstitions to help yourself in your own favor. One time I was walking through the park at night going home, and a strange man was walking behind me, and I just felt a little creepy, a little worried, like, who's this guy? And he seemed to be going everywhere I went, so I started whistling and pointing at the moon at the same time, which I know are two things you should definitely not do in Ghost Month. And I thought, if I do this, he'll think I'm completely crazy or maybe a ghost myself. He'll leave me alone. Well, sure enough, I got home safely.
That's the way that it works out. I've heard of another person chewing on leaves to make themselves foam at their mouth when they were being followed. So these things do sometimes work out well for you. That's nothing to do with Ghost Month
tradition, chewing on leaves.
No,
I've never heard that one.
Just kind of keeping yourself alive in the park at night.
You can do that the other 11 months of the year, I guess.
Yeah, no, we're here talking about Changgu, which is part of Ghost Month, toward the end of the Ghost Month period. And we're going to get into it right now by listening to the whole article one time.
Changgu, a blend of faith, history, and physical feats. Taiwan's Ghost Month, the 7th month of the lunar calendar, is a significant time of tradition and folklore. This period highlights ancestor worship and the importance of honoring the dead. People follow various customs and avoid specific taboos to prevent bad luck. For instance, whistling at night is said to attract wandering spirits. People also avoid swimming, as drowning victims' restless spirits may look for someone to substitute for them. Hanging clothes outside at night, taking photos after dark, and moving into a new house are also discouraged during this time. These practices reflect a deep respect for spirits and a desire to maintain harmony between the living and the deceased. Several important festivals take place during Ghost Month. On the first day, when the gate to the underworld opens, spirits begin to roam the realm of the living. The 15th day, known as the Zhongyuan Festival, is a major occasion when people across Taiwan offer elaborate feasts to both their ancestors and wandering souls. Finally, on the 30th day, when the gate is believed to close, one of Taiwan's most spectacular traditions, Changgu, takes center stage. Changgu, commonly translated as Ghost Grappling Festival, marks the end of Ghost Month. The origins of Changgu date back to the Qing dynasty in ancient China. Some historians believe it was originally a ritual to donate food to the poor and displaced. When early Chinese settlers migrated to Taiwan, they brought this tradition with them. Over time, it gradually evolved and took on new local characteristics. Today, the competitive aspect adds excitement, but the event's spiritual values remain at its core.
All right, so Changgu, it doesn't look like how we say it. You see that CHIANG-KU? You just have to remember that that's what we end up doing with the English versions of the Chinese words a lot of times. And it's a blend of faith, history, and physical feats. Feats being what? Incredible actions that you take where you're showing off your skill at something. So you can do a daring feat of danger by jumping over a car like Evel Knievel or a bunch of cars, or show an amazing feat of strength by, lifting up that said car at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not often that we have physical feats being part of a holiday. Of course, faith, history, A lot of our traditions are based on religious faith, and yes, a lot of them also have a long history, but the physical feats, physical actions, exercises, stunts, tricks, we're going to find out all about the things that you might be doing during Changgu. So let's get out into the article and find out exactly what we're talking about and when we're talking about it. Well, I think most people know, as the first sentence tells us, Taiwan's Ghost Month, the 7th month of the lunar calendar, is a significant time of tradition and folklore. Yes, absolutely. And I'm sure none of that is new information for people who've lived here a long time. The 7th month of the lunar calendar, that's important. Generally, when we're talking about most dates on the calendar, your birthday or Christmas or Halloween or things like that, that would be based on the solar calendar, the calendar centered on the sun and the Earth's movement around the sun. The lunar calendar is an older one based on the moon. And generally, the months are close, but not quite right. So the 7th month of the lunar calendar, if that was the solar calendar, we'd call that July. But from my memory, the 7th month of the lunar calendar falls more towards August, which is kind of the 8th month of the solar calendar.
And can blend into September sometimes.
Exactly, yes. It can even go a little bit later. But yes, for a lot of these religious holidays, including Chinese New Year here in Taiwan, they follow the lunar calendar. At least they sort of choose the dates based on the lunar calendar. And then, of course, we translate it to our more commonly used solar calendar. So there you go. It's near the end of the summer, the beginning of the fall. That's usually when it is. And it's a significant or important time of tradition and folklore. Well, all good holidays have traditions, right? They go back in history. They're important in the culture. They teach you something about those people and their beliefs and their values and their history. And folklore is kind of a way of explaining your tradition, your culture, your history. When we think of folklore, we might think of Greek myths, we might think of fairy tales, we might think of fables and things like that. Old stories from the past of heroes and villains and ghosts and kings and queens and things that may have happened in history, but are often kind of divorced from history, not quite based on real events, more based on things that happened a really long time ago, or, actual events, but they've kind of changed and grown. The stories become more interesting and exciting and stuff like that, but still a very important and key part of many traditions and cultures.
And this period highlights ancestor worship and the importance of honoring the dead. People follow various customs and avoid specific taboos to prevent bad luck. That's one of those things that's a taboo.
I'm doing it again.
So taboo is something that society kind of says, no, don't do this. It's bad luck. It's bad for you. It's banned. Nobody accepts that you do this thing. It's actually a Tongan word. I think that Captain James Cook was the one who kind of brought it over into Western society at one point, but it is originally from a Tongan word, tapu, I think. And it says that, for instance, whistling at night is said, as you were doing, to attract wandering spirits. And we don't really want to do that, because who needs some extra wandering spirits wandering our way, walking our way? People also avoid swimming, as drowning victims' restless spirits may look for someone to substitute for them. And you know all these different things that are taboo in Ghost Month. There are quite a number of them. And one of them is swimming because, well, someone might want to take over your body. A wandering spirit might want to take over your body, as it is looking for someone to take over, is looking for someone to substitute for their life. They want to take over your life. Substitute can also be used for whenever you replace one thing for another. For example, when your teacher gets sick or is pregnant, they might need some time off and there will be a substitute teacher. Or if you don't really like to eat too much sugar, you might substitute something like stevia, or I don't know if it's stevia or stevia for it, or monk fruit sweetener as a way to maybe be a little bit healthier. Hanging clothes outside at night, taking photos after dark, and moving into a new house are also discouraged during this time. I just want to mention something. You see this expression, hanging clothes outside? One of the really popular things to say in Taiwan at the moment is, I have to hang my clothes. And every time I think of that, I think about someone putting their hands around the neck of the t-shirt that they're putting up on a hanger. Because what you should really say in American English anyway is hang up my clothes. But it's become very popular to say hang my clothes. But here, the hanging clothes has something after it. Hanging it where? Hanging it outside, and then it's not a problem. Hang up my clothes to let them dry. and hanging up your clothes or taking photos after dark, hanging up your clothes outside at night, taking photos after dark, and moving into a new house are things you just don't do at this time of the year. You don't buy a new motorbike. You don't do this stuff.
Absolutely. These are taboos, and if you really believe these traditions, you are just inviting bad luck and evil into your life. I don't have really a problem with many of these things. I usually hang my clothes in the afternoon when I'm washing them, and I don't take many photos at night. The one I did feel sad, it's hot in Taiwan at this time, and that whole thing against swimming, that just seems to me a little mean. It's the best time to go to the beach, but we're not allowed to. But I understand, of course, the ocean can be a scary place any time of year. And if you know that there are ghosts and sharks out there under the water, maybe stay on the beach and don't go into the water. So these are some of the well-known taboos that I'm sure many people have heard and are familiar with and maybe even follow because they believe in some of this stuff. But as it says, these practices or these traditions or these sort of ways of doing things reflect a deep respect for spirits and a desire to maintain harmony between the living and the deceased in the same way that we might bring flowers to a cemetery or, go to tomb sweeping. We clean up the graveyard. That's to show respect for spirits, for the dead, for our ancestors, and just for, people who've passed away, people who've died before us. So we want to show respect for them. And it's also a desire. We want to maintain harmony between the living and the deceased, because of course a lot of people have, strong beliefs that ghosts are real and ghosts must be sort of kept happy. Otherwise they can do bad things in your life. And that would be the deceased we're talking about here. That's just another way of saying dead people. So when you pray, you might be sort of giving tribute to the deceased. If you go to a funeral or some kind of memorial service after a person has close to you has died, there might be all sorts of people there, people crying, people telling stories, making speeches, remembering happy times with the deceased, with the person who has died or passed away.
This is also very fascinating, and we need to listen to our Chinese teacher now to make sure we know what we're talking about.
Hello everyone, 我是 Patrick. 今天讲解的是抢姑 A blend of faith, history, and physical feats. 这个单元介绍的是抢姑这项民俗活动。课文呢有2天的内容，大家或许都在新闻报道里面看过抢姑，不过大家还记得是在什么地方、什么地点举办的吗？农历7月在头城、恒春都保有这项传统。今天的课文内容并没有直接切入抢姑这项民俗活动，而是以对外国人非常友善的方式写作。同学阅读后可以用课文的内容跟外国朋友介绍哦。课文先介绍了鬼月对于台湾人的意义，在于慎终追远，先引发读者的好奇心。好，我们一起来看学习重点吧。请看到第一段的第一句就讲到 Ghost Month， 也就是农历7月。农历7月 7th month of the lunar calendar。 好，请同学画记下来。再来，请看到第2句有个重要的动词 This period highlights， 请同学把 highlights 画起来。 Highlights 表示特别重视或注重的意思，表示这段时期，也就是农历7月会特别强调或者凸显祭祖或者我们说敬拜往生者的重要性。好，再来请同学看到第3个句子，有个重要的词语搭配Follow various customs， 遵循各种习俗。好，当我们在讲遵循习俗的时候，动词用的是 follow customs。 再来请同学特别注意到，在台湾农历7月的时候，有些事情是不要做的，这是我们所谓的禁忌 taboos。 有哪些呢？包括请看第4个句子 Whistling at night， 晚上不要吹口哨。为什么？因为要避免 attract wandering spirits， 不要去引来在外游荡的孤魂野鬼。此外还有呢，第5个句子不要去游泳。怎么说？有一种说法是说7月的时候在水中有一些往生者，他如果因为溺水而往生的话，这些冤魂可能会抓交替。抓交替英文要怎么解释啊？ Look for someone to substitute for them。好，再来我们请同学看到第6个句子，还提到了其他农历7月不宜的行为。 请同学特别注意的是，这里我们用的是被动语态，这些行为呢怎么样 ？Are also discouraged. Are also discouraged. 请同学画起来。再来呢，请看到第7个句子。第7个句子呢，做了一个小小的总结。以上的这些做法反映出什么？就是台湾人呢，对这些往生者，对这些所谓的好兄弟非常的敬重。好，那请同学呢看到第7个句子最后面有一个字很重要，就是 the deceased。前面呢是说 harmony between the living and the deceased， 表示呢就是在世间的人还有这些往生者之间要维持和谐的状态。好， the deceased 表示已经往生的人，同学要特别注意的是发音，我们念作 deceased， 跟疾病这个 disease 是不一样的，拼法也不同。疾病是 D-I-S-E-A-S-E, disease.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back. So there are several important festivals that take place during Ghost Month. We see as we move into the next paragraph, you got a whole month of celebrations or, bye-byes and pudu, things like that you can do to kind of help these wandering spirits see that they are respected, loved, help them have things in the afterlife, their paper car that gets sent up to the heavens. Help them find their way into the happier spaces of the afterlife instead of being stuck in the in-between worlds. And so, there's lots of things that go on. On the first day, when the gate to the underworld opens, spirits begin to roam the realm of the living. Roam here means to kind of wander around and look at things without any specific kind of end goal of where you need to get to. You might roam through the park, look at the flowers, enjoy the sounds and scents and just the entire day. But you're not really going there with a plan to walk straight this way and then walk straight that way and get to point A or B at the end. It's more of a gentle kind of roaming, wandering thing that you are doing. The 15th day, which of course is the middle of the lunar month, is known as the Zhongyuan Festival, and is a major occasion when people across Taiwan offer elaborate feasts to both their ancestors and wandering souls. So that's a time for the big bye-byes. A lot of times the 15th of the month is the bye-bye time, as we know. And finally, on the 30th day, so the end of the month, when the gate is believed to close, it's time to close those gates. The wandering spirits need to head back home. One of Taiwan's most spectacular traditions, Changgu, takes center stage. And this is just the time when people celebrate Changgu. And I'm just going to wander into this next paragraph quickly. It says, Changgu, commonly translated as Ghost Grappling Festival, marks the end of the Ghost Month. And I just wanted to mention that it goes back to the Qing dynasty, which we will see. Supposedly in the late 1700s to mid-1800s was the first time it was really celebrated in mainland China. And then with all the back and forth from China to Taiwan, the tradition was brought over here.
Interesting. Ghost Grappling Festival. So that's the best translation that we have in English for Changgu, which is very interesting. Kind of makes you think of some kind of sporting contest or wrestling match, because that's kind of what grappling is. Yeah. Grappling is kind of like wrestling. When you see two fighters and they kind of have their arms wrapped around each other, maybe it's in the middle of a boxing match. Maybe two wrestlers are just kind of getting started, grabbing hold of their opponent's arm, trying to get an advantage. And of course, sumo wrestling, when they're not kind of bouncing off each other and shoving each other, they're grabbing each other's belts. That's grappling as well. And we can also talk about grappling with a problem. If you take on a problem, if you're, dealing with something that's kind of complicated and difficult to solve or, get a good solution to, you're grappling with a problem, you're grappling with a question. Should I move to Japan for a new job or should I stay here and take care of my family? Oh, I'm grappling, I'm dealing, I'm wrestling, I'm kind of fighting with this thing. So there we are. We're going to be grappling with the ghosts because, of course, we want them to go home and close those gates so we can, go back to the beach. The origins of Changgu date back to the Qing dynasty in ancient China. So yeah, here we go. Traditions, history, rituals, things that have sort of been passed down to us in our generation from generations in the past. This is going back to the Qing dynasty, so not too far back in Chinese history, but still, hundreds of years for sure. It says some historians believe it was originally a ritual to donate food to the poor and displaced. Very interesting. So it kind of started off as an exercise in charity or in, kind giving, a ritual to donate food to the poor. Well, when you donate things, you're giving away things that maybe you don't need, but more importantly, maybe other people need more than you do. So if you have extra money and you want to help out people, you might donate money to a local hospital or a charity or something you believe in where they're helping people who are have less than you or less lucky than you or need a lot of help. So you can donate food, you can donate money, you can donate your time by volunteering to help out in a certain type of thing. And yes, of course, even today, we donate food to soup kitchens and churches and temples and charities and other people who do good work and help out people who have less than us. And this is a ritual, though. Generally, with when we donate things in the modern world, we don't really have a ritual. You might just, make a bank transfer, write a check, or drop off a box of things you don't need, and you're donating in that way. But a ritual is a bit more traditional. It's a bit more formal. Often when we see the word ritual, we think of religions and the things that you sort of have to do as part of some kind of religious rite or practice or just a way of doing things. A simple example would be when we have a wedding. There's often a ritual where the bride will wear white and she'll wear a gown, and the husband, the groom, will wear a tuxedo, and they'll exchange golden rings and put them on a certain finger on the hand. And, we do all these things, and those are the rituals of a wedding ceremony. So you kind of go through that to feel like you follow the traditions and you've done the right thing, and everyone, who knows you will understand that you're getting married because you've gone through all the right actions or you've performed all the right rituals. Here, though, there's a ritual to how you actually donate the food, so that's very interesting. And this food is going to, yes, people who need a bit of help, people who are poor, who don't have a lot of money, and people who may be displaced, which is an interesting term because that kind of makes us think of refugees, people you see on the news maybe who've had to run away from their homes because of wars or natural disasters. An earthquake, forces thousands of people to move and to find a home in another part of the country or whatever. So they've been displaced. They've kind of been forced away from their home, from the place that they live. And of course, in that situation, again, people will need extra help.
And when early Chinese settlers migrated to Taiwan, they brought this tradition with them. So when the settlers, if they were displaced, when they were kind of removed from the place they lived in, they had to go somewhere. So they had to move, they had to migrate, they had to change from one location to another. A lot of times when we talk about migrating, we talk about birds migrating south for the winter to get away from the cold weather. They'll go south, they'll move or fly south for the winter, and they'll migrate there. There's a general migration because of climate change of different animal species and things like that. And as well, there's often a discussion of migration from rural areas to urban areas because people can find that they can't really survive well in a rural area and make enough money to support their family. So they'll migrate or move to an urban area. It's often connected as well with immigrate or emigrate. Immigrate being to come into a place, emigrate to be going out to the other place. And so, here we're talking about Chinese settlers moving into Taiwan, and this tradition came over with them because, well, it's a good ritual. It celebrates a lot of interesting things. You're looking out for the wandering spirits, trying to help them in purgatory. You're showing respect for your ancestors, and you're also, showing some appreciation of the process of being an immigrant and coming into the country and how difficult it was. And that's a lot how it's celebrated in Taiwan, too. And over time, it gradually evolved. So it gradually changed and shaped into something else. Maybe it got even better. It just changed, right? It a lot of times with evolution, we think of that being a positive and improved development. And took on new local characteristics. So some local Taiwanese traditions were brought in, and it becomes a little bit more Taiwanese than it was like it's celebrated in Taiwan as how it was celebrated in mainland China. Today, the competitive aspect adds excitement, but the event's spiritual values remain at its core. So we're going to talk about the competitive aspect tomorrow when we will see how that all works out. But yeah, it's competitive these days. People are competing against one another to be the fastest. But that's still also really, set and focused in on the spiritual value. So that's at its core. At its core means at its foundation, at its, prime level. That is what it's all about, the spiritual values. You can also talk about your physical core or your muscular core, like when you're trying to get into better shape. You're normally going to train your core, and that's talking about training your core muscles or the really big, important muscles to get them in shape so everything else kind of starts to hold together a little bit better. You can also talk about a problem at its core, and that just means at its foundational or central, most important level. So that's a lot of information right now, and I think we need our Chinese teacher to help us work through it.
好，再来我们看到第二段的第一个句子，这算是我们的主题句。一开始就告诉我们说，在农历7月有3个重要的节日，分别呢就是第二句、第三句、第四句所介绍的7月初1鬼门开、7月15中元节，以及呢第4个句子所讲的7月最后一天，那就是鬼门关的日子。那我们分别看到有几个重要的英文句子，同学可以学起来。When the gate to the underworld opens， 那鬼门怎么讲呢？ The gate to the underworld。 好，再来呢，我们看到第3个句子，这里有一个重要的形容词，请同学看到 When people across Taiwan offer elaborate feasts。 好，请同学特别注意的是，全台湾的人都怎么样呢？会摆设贡品嘛。好，那这些贡品呢，或者说他们会做一些饭菜来提供给这些好兄弟享用。这些 elaborate 就是用来形容民众所准备的这些食物。elaborate 是精致的、精心准备的。再来，请同学呢看到第4个句子最后一个片语。Take center stage 就是在最后一天，7月的最后一天鬼门关的时候呢，就会有一些重要的活动会登场。Take center stage 我们可以解释为登场。好，再来我们看到第3段第1个句子，这里呢把抢孤从字面上如果去翻译的话呢，会说就是Ghost Grappling Festival。 老师要解释一下这个 grappling它的原形动词是 grapple， 它有空手搏斗、扭打的意思。不过 grapple 也常常会引申出来，表示呢去处理相当困难很有挑战的这些工作。比方说像我们在处理问题的时候，你可以说 I'm still grappling with this problem。 好，再来请同学看到第2个句子，我们请同学把 origins 就是源头画起来。要注意重音在第一音节 origins。 那这个源头以上的这个活动抢孤这个活动可以追溯到什么时候？动词片语用 date back to， 用主动的就好了。好，那再来第3个句子，最后面有一个重要的形容词。好， the displaced。 那这里呢 the 加上抽象的形容词，所指的呢其实是一群人。这群人呢就是流离失所的人。那比方说台风地震之后，有很多人没有办法住在他们原本的地方，这些民众我们也可以称他们为 the displaced。 好，以上就是我们针对抢孤这篇课文第1天内容所做的中文讲解。 See you next time.
All right, everybody. We've learned a little bit about Changgu, and tomorrow we're going to find out all about the competitive side of it. I'm kind of excited about that. What about you, Mike? Would you like to get in there and do a little grappling?
I don't know what we're going to be doing. Is this a whistling competition? Pointing at the moon competition?
That's taboo.
Yes, I'm ready. I think I'm ready to grapple with the ghost, but I'll only know when we come back and read part 2 tomorrow.
For English Digest, I'm Leah.
And I'm Mike.
See you tomorrow.
I'm nervous.